In this GlassTrax training video, I'll be covering how to create a new inventory item. If you have not set up your inventory categories, please look up the GlassTrax inventory categories video before proceeding on this video. So the first place you're going to come is up here at the top with inventory control, and the first button within the master files section is items. So if you click on that, the item maintenance screen opens. And if you're creating a new item, you click this N button or hit Control N. And I'm going to go ahead and type in training video item for my item ID. Item IDs can be 25 characters long. Item names can be 50 characters long. So I'm just going to give it the same name here, training video item. And my category ID, I've already created that, so I know my category is train. If I don't know, I can always click my binoculars up here and it'll list all my categories here. And I can go ahead and say, all right, let's do train. And now I come down here to my dimension 1. My dimension 1, these little boxes here are for whole inches. Most of our customers will be sticking with the drop downs. So for example, if this is a 1/4 inch clear piece of glass that I've given the name training video item, I can go ahead and say, all right, the first layer is 1/4 inch. If it's an insulated unit or a laminated glass, you can come down and do the next layer and the next layer and so on. So as you come down here, you work from the outside toward the inside. So if I'm just doing a dual glaze unit, it's just right here. If I'm doing a triple, I'd come put the next layer here, up to 5 layers here if you're doing bulletproof. So that's how you set those up. The default spacers can also go in here, and again, if you don't know your default spacer codes, you can also look up those default spacer codes via the lookup screen, the find function with these binoculars here. But for this case, I'm going to leave it at 1/4 inch piece of glass. The next thing I'm going to do is come down here to this outside, center, inside checkboxes. If you don't see those there, there's a feature, it's 2802, to enable the outside, center, inside functionality. And what this does is it allows me to build insulated units on the fly in the sales order detail screen. So if I go ahead and say, yeah, this particular item, I could put in an insulated unit. It could go on the outside or the center or the inside, or this last box here is for monolithic. It could go by itself, or it could go in any place on an IG unit. So that way I'm going ahead and giving that permission to be added to an IG unit on the fly from the sales order screen. Next, I'm going to jump over here to my default sales order quantity. I'm going to say I sell it by the piece, and my price is always by the square foot. My quick key code, this doesn't get used as often, but you can assign a quick key category or quick key code for items that you sell often. So for example, you might want to call this 14 for that 1/4 inch. Now when I go to the sales order detail screen, you'll also see a quick key code field there, and if you type in 14, this item comes in automatically, so you don't have to type in training video item or look it up. Sort sequence is on the lookup screen. If you want to give this a 1, that will be at the top of your lookup screen. So if you're doing an item lookup, this will be listed at the top. You can order your items in this particular way, and that way the most used ones or the ones you want to see at the top appear at the top. Next down here is a buyout. If it's a buyout item, meaning you don't stock it, you have to buy it from a vendor every time your customer orders it from you, go ahead and check this Y buyout. If not, you do keep it in stock. You do buy it and keep it in stock and sell it from your stock. Keep it at N for stock. And direct just means that your vendor always sends it to your customers directly for you. I'm going to leave this at stock for now. And over here to the right, I'm going to go ahead and say tempered. Let's say if it's tempered, or if it's heat strengthened, or if it's annealed, or if it's laminated. Just make sure you check the right boxes there that apply, because we count tempered square footage and weight based off of those check marks. The next thing you're going to want to do is come down here to this unit weight. If you just hit calculate, it'll go ahead and calculate the weight based on the thickness of glass that you have in here. So if I add another 1/4 inch here and I hit calculate, it should double to 6.7. If I get rid of it and hit calculate, it goes back to that 3.35. So that's how you calculate the weights. If weight is something that's important to you as you load your trucks, make sure you have this calculate button hit before you save. If you do not have anything calculated, I do have an SQL that I can send you that will automatically do all of your items all at once if we need to do that. Hide item, this is something that gets used for older items. Mostly it's going to set to no. Yes, what it's going to do is it's going to hide from the lookup or find screen. But you will be able, if you know that the item ID is training video item and you type that in exactly and you have this set to yes, it will still let you sell it. It's just hiding it from the lookup screen. Whereas if you have it set to out of service, even if you were to type in training video item directly exactly onto the sales order detail screen, you'll get a pop-up saying, hey, you don't sell this item anymore. It's marked as out of service. And you will not be able to sell it. Color, don't worry about that. Short name, also, if you want to fill that in, that's totally up to you. Down here is the most important part. So the OPT1 and OPT2, you might also see OPT3, 4, and 5. What you're going to be doing here is your optimization material codes. So if you are sending this out to an optimization software such as OptiWay or Perfect Cut, you're going to need to put in your optimization material codes here. Whereas we call this item training video item, your cutting table might recognize this item as 14C. So if you have that marked 14C, then when we export it, your cutting table does not know what training video item is, but they do know what 14C is, and it cuts it appropriately. These other items over here are not, I have as not used or UDF, so user defined field. You can set those up if you'd like. I've chosen glass tag or mark, or if it's created or not. You can go ahead and set those up. So that is what these optimization fields are for. If you are using the department barcode scanning for production tracking, you do have to have a code in here for anything that you want to be able to track production on. So even if you don't cut it, but you want to track it in production, you have to have something in there, whether it just be a dummy value, a fake value that just holds the place, or the actual material code. You do need to have that in there. Coming down here now to the buttons here, I can go ahead and click on pricing if I want to enter pricing in. I have a pricing training video if you want to look at that, but you can also enter in pricing from here just by hitting new and coming to square foot. I'm doing selling by the square foot, and I'm going to go ahead and say I start at 0 square feet, and I'm going to go ahead and check the box here to repeat on all columns, and I'm going to say, hey, I sell this for $2.25 a square foot. If they go over 100 square feet, then I go down to $2 a square foot, and I save that. So now I've added pricing. I can add stock sheets here by clicking on the stock sheets button, and I'm going to go ahead and hit new, and I'm going to say this is a 96 by 130. My reorder point is when I get down to 10 pieces of that. I'd like to have 100 of that on hand, and I can only reorder it in increments of 30, we'll say. And because there are 30 pieces per case. You can mark it as default size or no or common size. If you mark it as default size, anytime you pull this item into a sales order, it's going to default to sell at a 96 by 130. Now you can overwrite that at any time, but it does come with that size automatically anytime you sell that. So most of our customers just say, hey, no, it's not a default size. Then I save it and it gets added to the grid. Notice I can add as many stock sizes as I want for any particular item. That way you do not have to have multiple item IDs for the same item, just at different sizes. Next, I'm going to go to my max base and height button. You can put in your max base, your max height, your minimum base, your minimum height. Can rotate, so if it is, you can say, hey, my table can't handle anything that's over 96 inches wide, but you can go ahead and say, well, it's 96 inches high, so I can, or 96, it's 98 inches for my base, but only 48 high. I can rotate that and it'll still fit in my table or on my furnace. The next thing you can put is your maximum square footage or your minimum square footage. Max square footage, what you'll do is you can charge an oversized fee, or you can say I cannot do that because it is oversized. The minimum square footage will obviously calculate the minimum price based on that square foot price. Now, in my category training video, I did show you you can put in a minimum square foot for the category. Here's where you do it for the specific item. So you can say, hey, for all of my tempered glass, I have a minimum 5 square foot for size. But however, this particular training video item, it's a little bit easier to do. I'm only going to do 3 for my square foot minimum. Next, you can do your raw items. This is mainly used for IGs and lamis, but you can go ahead and say, here's my outside item, here's my center inside, my inside, and then for my 4th and 5th, if I'm doing a 5 light IG. And that way, when you manage your inventory, we know if, hey, when I sell one piece of training video item, it needs to pull a piece of 1/4 inch clear and a 1/4 inch tempered, and that way you can have your inventory update automatically as well. Light task is going to be covered in another video, which is for your barcode scanning and production management. And when I save this, I can get this add to my warehouses, yes, and continue. And I have multiple warehouses, so I'm going to skip this here. And now I can click on my item build-up screen. This is also used mainly for for IG, but it can also be used for glass that you always add bevels or always add polishes or something that you always add. Notice I've got my 1,4C right here. If I click on this button right here, it says add process. So if I add a process, I can say, hey, every time I sell this piece of glass, it always gets a 1/4 inch bevel, always. And it always gets holes. You can keep adding processes. So now when I say okay and I sell this training video item on my sales order detail screen, it's going to automatically add those processes every time I sell it. You can take them off if you want, but it's going to by default add them on so that you don't have to do it every single time you sell this particular item. So this is how you create a new item. If you do have questions, feel free to call us or email. We are happy to answer any of your questions. I did not cover all of the buttons in here because not everything gets used very often. So if you have a specific question about anything I did not cover, feel free to email or call.